Hi everyone, welcome to Chinese Anchor. If I told you a story from old China, a story about a 50-something man who married 4 wives, the youngest only 19, and how, inside a traditional walled compound, the wife eventually lost her mind. Another mysteriously disappeared without a trace, and shortly after, one went mad and another vanished. The man brought home a 5th wife, whose fate, like the others, remained uncertain and ominous. What would you think? These stories come from a famous Chinese novella called Wives and Concubines by Su Tong. It's been translated into English as Raise the Red Lantern and into French as this. And sorry, I cannot read French. If any of you can, please feel free to teach me. Thank you. And the novella has not only been translated into different languages, it was also adapted into a film, and it was entered into the 48th Venice International Film Festival. But this story is more than just a tale of the feudal household. It's really an allegory about power, human nature, oppression, and resistance. It's set in the early Republic of China, the 1920s, a time when the empire had already fallen. Yet many feudal traditions and beliefs were still deeply rooted inside these secluded compounds. Today, let's talk about the lives of the women trapped inside such a household. One of the main characters is Song Nian, a 19-year-old girl. She had only completed half a year of university when her father passed away. Her stepmother then prepared to marry her off to a wealthy man in his 50s. A man who already had 3 wives. Song Lian's silence, her helplessness, and the faint tears in her eyes seemed to foreshadow what kind of life awaited her. And so, the story begins. On her very first day in the household, the servants began attending to her, combing her hair, dressing her, and performing the traditional foot massage ritual. This foot massage service was a symbol of a woman's status in the family, because it was only given to the wife whose room the master chose to stay in that night. For the women of the compound, it was considered an honor. Another thing they considered an honor was having all the red lanterns in front of their doors lit. As night fell, the red lanterns outside Song Lian's door were lit, casting a soft glow across her room. She sat quietly on the bed, waiting for her husband, the master of the household. When he entered, he asked her to lift a lantern to her face. He said he wanted to see clearly that purity and beauty of this young college girl she had just married. Obediently, Song Lian raised the lantern, illuminating her face, but instead of joy, her expression held only loneliness and helpless resignation. At this point, you might be wondering, why do they massage the wife's feet? When the master came to Song Lian's room, he explained that the foot massage was meant to improve a woman's health, so she would be better prepared to serve him at night. In other words, any privilege given to the women in this compound was ultimately for the purpose of pleasing the man, the master. Their wedding night, ironically, was also the moment that stirred jealousy from the other wives. Before the newlyweds had even fallen asleep, the third mistress called for the master, claiming she wasn't feeling well. After the master left Song Lian, the moment he stepped out, every lantern in front of her door was extinguished. Feeling humiliated and abandoned, Song Lian lifted a single lantern to her face, its dim light revealing the tears she couldn't hold back. The next morning, the steward led Song Lian to pay her respects to the elder wives. The first mistress greeted her briefly and formally, exchanging only a few polite words before walking away. Even so, Song Lian bowed to her, showing proper respect as the newest wife in the household. Then the steward brought Song Lian to the second mistress. This was her, warm, friendly, talkative. She appeared to be the kindest among them. But in reality, she was the most calculating and the most ruthless woman in the entire compound. From her conversation with the second mistress, Song Lian learned that after her father passed away, the family business collapsed. They could no longer afford her university tuition. So her stepmother arranged this marriage for her. After visiting the second mistress, Song Lian went to pay respects to the third mistress. But the third mistress refused to see her, claiming she wasn't feeling well. Song Lian, being young and proud, didn't try to insist. She simply turned around and walked away. At the lunchtime, the third mistress finally appeared. This was her. She could sing, she could dance, and carried herself with confidence. Even though Song Lian greeted her politely, the third mistress responded with nothing but disdain. High and proud, she didn't even look at Song Lian. Perhaps out of jealousy, and completely ignored her greeting. Despite appearing cold and unapproachable, the third mistress was actually far kinder than she seemed. Compared to the second mistress, she was the only one who truly had a good heart, and would eventually become the only person in the entire compound with whom Song Lian could share her real feelings. But that's for later. Let's keep going. That night, the master ordered the servants to light the lanterns outside Song Lian's door again. The familiar sound of foot massaging echoed through the county yard, just as the master was preparing to spend the night with Song Lian. There was a knock on the door. A servant reported that the third mistress was feeling unwell again, and asked the master to go check on her. This time, he didn't go. He stayed with Song Lian for the night. But you should never underestimate a woman's jealousy. Before dawn the next morning, the third mistress started singing loudly in the county yard, her voice piercing through the early morning silence, making it impossible for Song Lian to sleep. Furious, Song Lian dressed herself, followed the sound, and went straight to confront her. After a tense exchange, the third mistress gave her a cold look and walked away without a word. After her confrontation with the third mistress, Song Lian returned to her room, feeling depressed and upset. But the moment she stepped inside, she discovered something that shocked her. Her maid was standing at bed with the master, kissing, laughing, and flirting. The maid didn't even greet her. She simply walked past Song Lian as if she didn't exist. Song Lian, overwhelmed by humiliation, jerked the master's hand away in anger. Tears she had suppressed for so long finally burst out. In this deep, enclosed household, a woman could only survive by being completely obedient. If she wasn't, no matter how young or beautiful she was, the master could ignore her at the moment, treating her like she was nothing. That night, the master ordered the servants to light the third mistress' lanterns, which meant he would not stay in Song Lian's room. The sound of foot massaging coming from the third mistress' quarters echoed through the county yard, landing heavily on Song Lian's heart, driving her thoughts into chaos. She wandered alone in the county yard and stumbled upon a locked room. Just then, the second mistress spotted her and invited her downstairs for a chat. With her usual warm smile, the second mistress welcomed Song Lian and even gifted her a piece of fine silk to make a beautiful dress. Song Lian asked her about the locked room, but the second mistress replied, "Don't ever mention that room again. Many people died in there." Song Lian said nothing, but quietly walked away. Later that day, Song Lian was playing mahjong with the third mistress and two of other friends. She accidentally dropped a tile, and when she bent down to pick it up, she caught a shocking sight. The third mistress was floating under the table, touching the leg of a male player with her foot. One morning, Sonia heard someone playing the flute. She asked the servant who it was. The servant told her it's the young master, the son of the master and the first mistress. He returned this morning and she is leaving tomorrow to do business in Yunnan. Following the sound of the flute, Sonia walked toward him. And for the first time since her marriage, Sonia smiled. They exchanged a few simple greetings and parted ways. But both of them turned back to steal one more look at each other. When Sonia returned to her room, she searched her trunk for her own flute, only to find that it was gone. Sonia feels the maid has been acting sneaky, so she accuses her for stealing the flute. The maid denies it, but Sonia dragged her to her room to search. When the maid blocks the door and refused to let her enter, it only deepens Sonia's suspicion. Furious, Sonia pushes the door open, and what she sees shocks her. The maid's room is filled with lit lanterns. Her ambition to become a mistress is now undeniable. The maid begs the fourth mistress not to tell anyone about the lanterns. Sonia says, "Fine, return my flute and I won't tell." But the maid insists she never took it. Enraged, Sonia begins rummaging through the room, and she discovers something far darker. The maid is practicing sorcery using the door to curse Sonia to death. If you are curious about this kind of witchcraft, we actually talked about it in the 武则天 episode. Feel free to check that out. Overwhelmed with anger, Sonia beats the maid. Once she calms down, she starts thinking, the maid is illiterate, so who told her to write my name on the door? After questioning her, the truth comes out. The one who orchestrated the curse is none other than the always warm and enthusiastic second mistress. Sonia later learns another truth that devastates her even more. The flute wasn't stolen by the maid. The second mistress asked the master to have the servants take it away. The master believed the flute was a gift from Sonia's lover, but in reality, it was a keepsake left by her father. And worst of all, the master had already burned her flute. At that moment, Sonia's expression says everything. Deep sorrow and a heart completely shattered. The next day, the second mistress pretends nothing happened. She cheerfully visits Sonia and asks her to help trim her hair. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoes across the courtyard. Servants rush into Sonia's room, only to see that she has cut off one of the second mistress's ears. Soon after, the third mistress arrives and speaks honestly with Sonia. She says, "In this household, the one I can never defeat is the second mistress, because behind her sweet smile lies a poisonous heart." She then shares a horrifying story. When she was pregnant, the second mistress actually mixed abortion medicine into her food. Luckily, the third mistress survived, and so did her child. The third mistress also warns Sonia, "If you don't give this family a son, your future will be very tough." A few days later, the master and the servants rush excitedly to Sonia's room, because they believe she is pregnant. From that moment on, Sonia receives the best care from all the maids. One afternoon, the maid is washing Sonia's clothes when she notices blood on her undergarments, just like menstrual blood. She immediately reports it to the second mistress. The second mistress now suspects Sonia is actually not pregnant, but she cannot confront the master directly, so she plays it smart. She tells him, "Sonia hasn't been looking well lately. Just to be safe, maybe we should have the doctor check on her." The master thinks the second mistress is being thoughtful and protective. Since he's nervous about the baby too, he agrees. The doctor who arrives is Dr. Gao. The same man who's secretly the third mistress' lover. He's the one she flirted with under the mahjong table using her food. But where their fate will lead, we will soon find out. After checking Song Lian, Dr. Gao quietly reports to the master that she's not pregnant. The master explodes with rage. He immediately ordered the servants to sell the lanterns, meaning the lanterns outside Song Lian's room will never be lit again. The master will never spend a night with her again. Just like a discarded piece of clothing, Song Lian is cast aside. Then comes Song Lian's birthday. She drinks alone, heavily. Coincidentally, the master's eldest son returns home that day. Outside Song Lian's room, her maid runs into the eldest son and asks him to check on Song Lian. He goes to her room, and the two talk for a while. When he gets ready to leave, Song Lian's eyes show a quiet reluctance, a longing not to be left alone again. Perhaps unable to escape her loneliness, the next day, Song Lian drinks once more and starts singing loudly. Her voice echoes through the entire county yard. Hearing the noise, the second mistress and several servants enter her room. As the second mistress tries to help the drunken Song Lian to bed, Song Lian, loosened by alcohol, blurts out the secret affair between the third mistress and the Dr. Gao. Before dawn breaks, Song Lian is awakened by woman's desperate screams. She steps outside and sees the third mistress, bound tightly, hair disheveled, being dragged away by the servants. Song Lian sobers instantly. She realizes that is the consequence of what she revealed last night, the secret she let slip to the second mistress. At this moment, Song Lian's emotions are a tangled mess. Bitterness, fear, guilt, all mixed together. Standing in the courtyard wind, even she herself looks a little shaken. The next day, she sees a group of servants carrying the third mistress toward the locked, forbidden room, the same room she once discovered but was told never to mention again. After they place the third mistress inside, the servants step out and lock the room once more. Song Lian, terrified, walks toward the locked door. As she enters, the only thing heard is her panicked screams echoing from inside. Shaken and traumatized, Song Lian stumbles out. The master asks coldly, "What did you see?" Song Lian whispers, trembling, You killed her." But the master simply replies, "You've gone mad." The following summer, fireworks fill the county yard again. Laughter, celebration, red lanterns everywhere. The master has taken a fifth mistress. As the servants give her a foot massage, the fifth mistress asks, "Who's that woman?" A servant answers lightly, "That's the fourth mistress, but she's gone insane." The sky outside is vast and open, but inside this courtyard, the woman can only see a narrow square of sky, a cage disguised as a home, a place where freedom ends, and fate quietly shuts the door. Alright folks, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from China. See you next time. Bye.